Hi guys, today Close Movie has summarized the film entitled Red Sparrow. This film tells the story of a ballerina who is forced by her uncle to become a state spy. Until she had a deep grudge against her uncle. Will she be able to take revenge? Okay, let's get straight to the story. The film begins by showing a woman, Dominica. She is now taking her mother to the hospital for a routine checkup. You need to know that the mother suffers from a chronic disease, so she must be checked regularly. Meanwhile, in another place, a man is seen receiving a telephone call. There he gets a secret code and writes it down. The code turned out to lead to a location. After finding out the location, he rushed there. Now the man is on a quiet street, and in front of him there is a mysterious man who is walking towards him. After passing each other, they seem to exchange items and give secret codes. Meanwhile, the police on patrol suspect him. When the police car was close to the mysterious man, he suddenly fired his gun and the police rushed after him. The chase was inevitable, and yes, this was his plan to protect the mysterious man he met so he could avoid police investigation. He finally decided to run to the American embassy. Dominica has now arrived home. After the nurse arrived, she immediately said goodbye to her mother to go to the theater performance. It turned out that Dominica was also involved in the performance. You need to know that Dominica is a professional ballerina. Dominica is now ready to appear on stage, but before that she met her uncle, Vanya Igorov. He introduced his colleague, Ustinov. To capture the moment, Ustinov invited Dominica to take a group photo. Now it's time for the performance to begin. Several junior ballerinas opened the performance very well. The sound of applause began to echo in the room. Dominica now entered the stage and the sound of applause from the art lovers there became even louder. Dominica became even more enthusiastic by showing her best performance on the grand stage and stunning performances from the ballerinos. But an incident that Dominica never thought of happened. When she was about to close the show, there was a jumping action, and at that time the ballerino accidentally stepped on Dominica's foot, causing a very serious injury at that very moment. Dominica was immediately rushed to the hospital. Turning to the man, he is Nate, a member of the American secret agency. He explained what happened that night. Nate said that his actions at that time were to divert the police's attention so that his colleague could escape. However, colleagues there said that the police on patrol that night were just ordinary police to protect motorbike gangs if anyone caused trouble. He concluded that the Russian police had now surrounded the man and would immediately arrest him. You should know that they call the man a marble. Elsewhere, Eganov was discussing with his superior named Zakharov. There was also a general named Korchnoi. At that time they discussed what happened that night involving Nate. They planned to immediately arrest a mysterious figure who is none other than Marble. Meanwhile at the hospital, Dominica has just regained consciousness after undergoing surgery on her leg. She was very sad to see condition like this, and now her dream of becoming the best ballerina was dashed as if swallowed by the earth. 6 months later, Igorov visits Dominica's house, where he argues that the accident was not a coincidence, without making direct accusations, but his suspicions turn to Sonia, who is a new ballerina. Igorov also offers Dominica a job, and if she is interested, Dominica should meet him first. No need to wait long. After hearing her uncle's statement, Dominica now goes to the theater practice to take revenge on Sonia and the man who stepped on her foot. When they were in the toilet, without realizing it, Dominica was already there, and that's when Dominica took revenge. When she got home, Dominica was shocked to see her mother lying on the floor. Her mother said the person looking after was no longer paid by the theater. Hearing all that, Dominica rushed to Igorov to ask about the job he was offered yesterday. Igorov gave Dominica the task of approaching Ustinov to get information from him, because currently the Russian defense needed a lot of information from him. Dominica is required to gain his trust, then find out the information needs. Dominica initially refused the job, but after remembering her mother's condition, she finally accepted the job. Tonight Dominica will carry out her first assignment. Igorov has prepared everything she needs at the hotel. Now it was time for Dominica to act. It seemed like there were only the two of them inside. Ustinov, who couldn't stand it any longer, rushed to connect it, but everything had to end quickly. Suddenly a mysterious figure wearing a helmet appeared, and at that moment Ustinov faced a dangerous situation involving his neck. After completing task, Dominika was then taken by the man to meet Igorov at the promised place. Dominika was very surprised to see this incident, but at that time Igorov actually offered Dominika the next job, because he thought Dominika had great potential to become a Russian spy. Dominika was then sent to a special school for Russian spies. Before leaving, her mother did not allow her to go, but Dominika had no other choice. Even though it was difficult, she went. When she arrived there, she was greeted by an old woman named Matron. She explained that at this school it was not allowed to use real names, and there Dominika was given the name Katya. Now Dominika is starting to enter class, where Matron is explaining about the Cold War between several countries, and in the future all the students there will be assigned to investigate which country will threaten Russia. While the lesson was in progress, Dominika and Victor were called to the front, where Matron was going to practice psychology. Matron ordered Dominika and Victor to immediately undress, but at that time Dominika did not obey her orders. Matron then lectured to Dominika that from birth her life belonged to the state, and she had to obey whatever the state asked. There came a day when the soldiers had just returned after 2 years of service. Matron told the students to choose one of the soldiers to immediately practice the psychology lesson that had been given. Dominika is seen taking a shower. Suddenly someone sneaks up from behind. He intends to damage Dominika's crown, but at that time Dominika is able to fight him. After that, Dominika was given sanctions and the man was called to class to give Dominika punishment. This time Dominika couldn't refuse his orders. As time went by, now that Dominika had completed training at a special spy school, Igorov immediately asked to meet her immediately. There Dominika was given the task of approaching Nate, an American secret agent who is now in Budapest. With a well-thought-out plan, Igorov gave Dominika a new passport and identity, which was now named Katerina Zubkova. The uncle was very confident that his nephew could carry out his duties well. Now that Dominika has arrived in Budapest, she went straight to the apartment that her uncle had prepared. In the apartment there was a woman who was Igorov's subordinate, Marta. They now have to carry out orders from Igorov's trusted friend in Budapest, Valentov. And now Dominika will carry out her duties. She is trying to attract Nate's attention while in the swimming pool. And sure enough, after he finished swimming, Nate greeted him and exchanged pleasantries. At the end of the conversation, Nate invited Dominika to dinner, but at that time she refused. Meanwhile, Nate finds out Dominika's real identity, who is none other than a secret agent from Russia. Nate also finds out that Dominika was assigned to approach him. Dominika went back to see Valentov. He thought Dominika was just walking alone because no reports had ever come in about Nate. In the afternoon Dominika returned to the apartment, but there she was surprised to see Marta lying in the bathroom. Marta failed to get important data about the defense system, so Marta had to end up like that. Matt Oren, the man who previously helped Dominika, becomes the perpetrator. As time goes by, Nate and Dominika's relationship becomes closer. Dominika begins to say that everything she does now is to give her mother a sense of security. Additionally, she states that it is because she is forced to work with her uncle. Hearing this explanation, Nate invited Dominika to work together and promised to protect her later when carrying out his duties. One day, Dominika was asked some questions. Apart from answering all the questions asked, Dominika also promised to provide important information to America, including the American senator's plan to provide information regarding America's security to Russia. Dominika then requested a transfer of $30,000. Dominika now meets Stephanie and claims to be Marta's messenger to carry out the transaction. At that time, Stephanie did not know that Marta had died. To increase Stephanie's confidence, Dominika took her into a room that had been prepared beforehand. There Dominika immediately showed the money in the bag, and so did Stephanie. She gave the disc to Dominika. After getting the disc, Dominika immediately went to the back to check its authenticity, but there she exchanged the disc with the disc that had been prepared. After the transaction was completed, Stephanie intended to go home, but after walking a few steps she realized there were many people following her. Stephanie felt panicked, and at that time she didn't realize there were many cars passing on the road, until she was hit. While Dominika was on way, suddenly Igorov ordered his men to take Dominika to Amsterdam. At this time, Igorov already suspected that Dominika would betray him. When she arrived there, Dominika was immediately interrogated and tortured on suspicion of treason. Despite receiving such painful torture, she still did not open mouth. After that, Igorov met with her, where Dominika begged that Dominika be returned to Russia immediately. There Igorov followed her wishes, and you need to know that this was Igorov's plan B. Now Dominika can meet her mother. At that time my mother was very concerned to see Dominika's body, which was full of wounds. Meanwhile, Igorov, Zakharov and Korchnoi are planning something. There they will reassign Dominika to approach Nate. Seeing that Dominika had returned, Nate couldn't believe it, but behind it all, Nate was very grateful. One night, Dominika is startled by a noise in the living room, and it turns out that Matorin is the one who wants to interrogate Nate. Dominika pretended to side with Matorin, and when the opportunity arose, she immediately beat Matorin until he was unconscious. But apart from that, Nate and Dominika suffered many injuries all over their bodies and had to be taken to the hospital immediately. After receiving treatment from the hospital, Dominika was approached by General Korchnoi. He claimed to be an American spy known as Marble. After admitting his identity, the general handed over all decisions to Dominika. He intended to help Dominika get out of this problem. General Korchnoi hopes that Dominika will report to Russia, so that Dominika can get a position in the Russian military, while he himself is ready to accept any punishment. After hearing the general's explanation, Dominika dared to communicate with Zakharov. She said wanted to exchange himself for a spy who was being held by Russia, and after that he promised to reveal the marble figure. Airport is the location that will be used as an exchange point. Nate really regrets Dominika's decision. The Russian military has now arrived there. They will carry out the exchange in the center. What surprised Nate, when the Russians removed his identity cover, it turned out that the person causing the riot was not General Korchnoi, but Igorov, Dominika's uncle. Seeing this scene we know that all this time Dominika has planned all this very well, where it was all just to get revenge on Igorov, and now her plan has succeeded. Starting from creating an account in Vienna in Igorov's name, and asking the Americans to transfer $250,000, then regarding the disc, Dominika exchanged it for a fake disc, then at Igorov's place Nate's fingerprints were found. This is all enough to bring charges against Igorov. On the other hand, General Korchnoi can still live peacefully because his true identity is not revealed by Dominika. Now Igorov is walking towards Nate, but suddenly a sniper targets him, and of course this causes Igorov to lose his life. The uncle who troubled his nephew has now received the reward he deserves. Dominika is now seen receiving awards in front of high-ranking officials and Russian military administrators, and not only receiving awards, Dominika is also appointed as an important official in Russia. At the end of the film we are shown that Dominika has received a telephone call from someone, but there is no sound. The film ends here. Thank you for watching. Subscribe now for other interesting content. See you in the next video.